Amen. Dan.
Well, good morning. Welcome to Sunday morning. I know where everybody's at because they parked at Park and Go, and they've been leaving since yesterday. So we do know where they're all at. It's funny, these front rows, there must be COVID here. Well, I'll be teaching these worldview classes over the next couple weeks. I think one of them is going to be the God-ordained family. One is probably going to be Christian economics. One will probably be Christian law. And the last one might be architecture. Because I think a lot of people don't understand that architecture is culture externalized, and you are being communicated to every single day, everywhere you go, in the architecture that you see. So we might make that one really different. Now, if you're really into this stuff, I start a class. It's a 4-year class. We start in the fall. You'll get to read numerous books, short books like Les Mis, and longer books like the Iliad and the Odyssey. And then we'll be discussing worldview in a syncretic classical system over a 4-year period. So if somebody really wants to dig in at a college level, we start out easy the first year. We just read the Iliad. That's it, one book. And I teach you how to read and study a book. Because kids need to learn how to do that. They skip over the vocabulary, right? Because I don't know the word we skip. Not this teacher. We send you back to every word, right, Lily? Right, Caleb? Yes. So that will start in the fall. So I want to welcome anybody that wants to do that, or any of you have kids that want to join me in those classes. It's a lot of fun. And it is hard work, but that's okay. We're good for that. Now, worldview. Anybody downhill ski here? We seem to have a theme here at this church about downhill skiing. Well, you know, there's 4 types of hills. There's a beginner's green circle. That means you got to push to actually go down the hill. You have a little blue square. That means you can point your skis downhill and you'll go. Then you have an advanced, a diamond. That means you get to go fast. Now, there's a thing called a triple diamond. That's where you meet Jesus. So, worldviews. I take my wife to Rainy River, Maine on a company gift to us to go downhill skiing. Of course, if you ski West Coast, it's powder. If you ski East Coast, it's glaze ice, right? So we had brand new racing skis that I got through my Rosino rep. We had them all sharpened and clean. And I took Jody right up to the top of the triple diamond right away. Absolutely, because think about it. She was thinking in her worldview, we were going to have this pleasant little ski thing going down the hill together. And I'm looking at this glazed hill that almost looks like it turns in. And I'm thinking, I can hit 60 miles an hour, I bet. And I can carve, and I can, the other way, and jump, and meet Jesus about halfway down. So I, of course, being very polite, said, okay, see you at the bottom. I'm gone. Down the hill, I rocket. Oh, I tell you, it was just great. Got to the bottom. Where's Jody? So I thought, she's probably going a little slow. I'll go up the lift, catch her on the way back. Go up the lift, come back down. She's still not there. 3rd time down, I come down the hill. She's still not there. But I get in the lift, and there's a guy on the lift with me. And he goes, there's a lady over there. She's going down the hill, and she's singing, I know I can do all things. I can do all things through Christ. I go, oh, that's my wife. At this moment, I realized our worldviews were in conflict. I was in trouble. Look at the look over there. I did catch up to her finally, and then we did ski together some. Now she's shaking her head. One hill, yes. We found a bunny hill somewhere, and we did it together probably. The point is, all of us enter experiences in our life, and we have a set of glasses on. And we see and understand our world through a worldview. That's why when we read the Iliad, we study the Greek worldview, and then we compare it to our biblical worldview. And you'd be surprised how different they are. And there's people that actually believe that our nation was founded after Greek and Roman republics. Nothing could be further from the truth. So I'm going to try to unwind that a little bit today with a worldview discussion. Worldviews are always focused on a principle. That's how we've taught our kids, principles, because they've got to go into life, and they've got problems they got to solve, and they have to reach into that file cabinet, that whole group of drawers that have principles in each drawer, and they open it up and go, oh, that's the principle for that problem. Now, what do I do with it from a biblical perspective? So that's how we've done that. Sarah was in my class, too. I forget that. All right, so let's go to the first slide. So what really happened on July 4th? So people that are watching this later, I wish them a happy July 4th. Those of you that are here, happy July 4th. A lot of people will say, well, July 4th was the signing of the Declaration of Independence, and that gave us what? Religious, economic, and political freedom. That's not what happened on July 4th. That's what happened years later because of what they did on July 4th. The reality is they probably wrote the document on July 2nd. They announced it on July 4th, and they didn't finish signing it till August 2nd. But there are 4 miracles that happened. But before I go to that, we're going to go back in history just a little bit. So let's flip back to the next slide. There we go. All right. Everybody turn your Bible for just a moment to Isaiah chapter 9, verse 6. It says, "For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given. And some of the government," parts of the government, no, "and the government will be upon his shoulders. And his name will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, and Prince of Peace." Hang on to that verse as we work our way through the Bible. So if we go back to Exodus 14, what you see here is the people of Israel, which at this point were the people that lived in Goshen. They've lived there for 400 years. They were very prosperous and very successful with the Egyptian people for a number of years, and were slowly coached like a frog in water into slavery. It happened over time. A lot of people don't realize that. There was a long time that they were an important part of the whole Egyptian culture, fought with their armies, were successful, were considered warriors, all good relationship, but it fell apart. And now the people of Israel are a whole mix of people. They're not just Isaac, Jacob, and Abraham's offspring. They're a whole mix of people that have now watched the power of the God of Yahweh take down almost every single Egyptian god there was. So if there's any question there is a God, that's got to be God. So now they've been allowed to leave, right? And they've marched out with the possessions of Egypt, and now they're standing at the Red Sea. And by the way, it was at one of the deepest parts of the Red Sea. Don't let people try to tell you it was at the Reed Sea and all this other stuff. But it was a super deep part. I have no idea how they were going to cross. They didn't come there with boats. They're just standing there. And guess what's coming behind them? Pharaoh, and he is hot around the collar. He is so mad, he wants to kill them all, which shows you how irritated he must have been, because that is wealth. He's willing to wipe out wealth over his God hardening his heart, right? And he is rolling at him with chariots. Chariots do not break for anybody, men, women, and children. And there they are at the Red Sea, and guess what they say? "Were there not enough graves in Egypt that you brought us here to the desert to die?" Now, they have just watched God deliver them out of how many different situations, right? But God's plan was to take them from slavery to freedom. So God parts the Red Sea. Now, can you imagine what that looked like? I mean, this is like 90 feet deep here. Those walls of water had to have been, it took faith just to walk through there. But they did. They walked to the other side. Pharaoh must really think a lot of himself to ride his army into that Red Sea. There's just arrogance here that God was going to deal with. Of course, Pharaoh's chariots are no more. They are wiped out. What's the principle of that scene? Who fights their battles? God. He's getting them ready for the next slide. Next slide, please. There we go. So what happens? They immediately start building a calf, don't they? Just because they got to wait for Moses. I mean, Charlton Heston's up on the hill getting the 10 Commandments made. Yul Brynner's done, right? And they can't wait. So they make a calf, and God goes, well, tell you what, you guys aren't ready. So into the wilderness they go, 40 years, purges out all the bad seed, and he gets them from freedom to sanctification. He's fixing them to a Hebrew republic around 1400 BC. Now, remember that verse I read in Isaiah 9:6? What was God's plan? He walked with Adam in the cool of the day. What's the relationship he wanted with his people? Direct relationship. He didn't want them to go through a king, a Caesar, a papal authority. He wanted the government to be right on him. That was the plan of the Hebrew Republic. And that's what Joshua did. If you go to this particular verse, he reads the law to all the people, and then he says, okay, everybody, are we in agreement? And then he says, choose this day who you will serve. And he says, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. At that point, we have the Hebrew Republic. Next slide, please. Bingo. So we come to Samuel. Now Samuel, of course, goes to God and says, God, they've rejected me. And God says, no, they've rejected me. They want to be like all the other people of the world. Doesn't that sound kind of familiar sometimes? They're more worried about how they fit with the other cultures and the way they behave, and, you know, they've got supposed riches that they don't. So they want a king. They want to look like everybody else. So they surrender the Hebrew Republic under God to have a king. And starting in 1000 BC, we have seen kings, Caesars, czars, dictators, tyrants. Kind of frustrating, isn't it? Next slide, please. You know, I used to study wolves up in northern Minnesota with a guy named David Meach. And one of the things, we darted them, hauled them, shot them with airplanes, you know, with the dart, going in the hole and pulling the babies out, taking blood tests, doing all this stuff. And one of the things we saw is that when the deer population's up, the wolf population is just chasing them. When the deer population drops, the deer population follows right behind it. What's always interesting to me is whenever I see the enemy at work, you just kind of want to look right around the corner, what's God up to? Because he's never fooled by anything. So here we are. The world's in a mess by this time, but God's moving. In 1450, we see the Gutenberg Bible printed. People were all of a sudden able to buy a Bible for 1 year's wages, and they were learning to read and write and read the Bible for themselves. Some groups didn't like that, because they might think. The next thing that happens is Constantinople falls in 1453. Shortly before that, people are smuggling books out of that part of the world, written in Latin, and they're moving it into Central Europe. And people, for the first time, are reading all these treatises written from ancient documents. One of them is called Brutus's Vindici contra Tyrannos, the reasons to resist tyranny, and it's all the biblical reasons to tell the magistrate no. See, before, the narrative is there's a king, he's divine. Caesar's divine. Tsar is divine. The Pope is divine. The narrative becomes that's just how it is. Now think about in your own lives, narratives that you think, okay, my kid's in high school, he's got to go to college next. My kid's in high school, he's got to go to college next. My kid's in high school, he's got to go to college next. Then he's got to get his PhD, he's got a master's degree, then he's got a master's degree, get a PhD. It's a narrative, isn't it? It's like a mantra. And that's what's happened. Everybody thinks this way. This is just what's next. We got a king, you got to have a king. Okay, some of them are good. Alfred the Great wasn't too bad. Some of them weren't very good at all. James was 1 foot in, 1 foot out. But these documents start to pour into Europe, and people are reading them. Martin Luther writes the treatise on the Wittenberg Gate in Latin. He does that because he doesn't want the unlearned people to read this stuff and cause riots. So he writes it in Latin. The idea is the learned people will read it, and they'll think about it. Because he spent 13 years trying to convert the Catholic Church back to its roots. Next, we see the Geneva Bible written in 1560. Get the sense, kind of God's on the move here? He's kind of moving. Do you ever feel that today? Like God's kind of on the move? I think he is. Next slide, please. Of course, we get the Geneva Bible, which became a core document to many people's reading and learning. Calvin and Beza were, of course, the leaders. Cole, Whitendale, Coverdale, Goodman, Gilby, and Sampson were the actual translators, the people that did the translations. Next slide, please. Now, Miracle 1. So we have this little group of people. They're called the Albion Seed. They're a tiny group of people in England. You notice it wasn't tens of millions, just a little tiny group. They've sailed across the ocean. They've been influenced by all these events that are going on, okay? And they go across the ocean and they find themselves not where they're supposed to be, right? And then they do something that had not been done ever. You see, although we have Magna Carta was written for the barons. It wasn't written for the everyday people. The barons got King John in a corner, put him in a headlock, and said, okay, you're going to sign this thing. But the people didn't really get the rights yet. English common law comes a little bit later, but still, they decided to covenant a form of government with the king. They made the decision. This is important because this is why they could tell the king no later. Because in their mind, no, we chose to join you. Now we're choosing to leave you. We chose to do that. That had never really been done before. So let's go to the first couple lines. Next slide, please. In the name of God, amen. We whose names are unwritten, the loyal subjects of our dread sovereign Lord, King James, by the grace of God, of Great Britain, France, do you love the spellings, by the way, of Ireland, defender of the faith, that's a debatable issue with King James, having undertaken for the glory of God, in advancement of the Christian faith, in honor of our king and country. Now, isn't that interesting? They came to the New World to what? Find riches and supplant the local people. No, they didn't. Christopher Columbus sailed across the ocean. You can read his own memoirs. He went there because he believed they could get Christianity to the Asian world, and it would put the Islamic world, which was a struggle for them at that day, between two Christian empires, and we could convert them. These people had the same focus. They're bringing the Christian faith to the local people. In honor of our king and country, a voyage to plant the first colony in northern parts of Virginia. Next slide, please. Do by these presents solemnly and mutually in presence of God and one another covenant and combine ourselves together into a civil body politic for the better ordering and preservation and furtherance of the ends aforesaid, and by virtue hereof to enact, constitute, and frame such just and equal laws, ordinances and acts, constitutions, and offices from time to time as shall be thought most meet and convenient for the general good of the colony, unto which we promise all due submission and obedience. They're forming their own government. They're going to form their own laws as necessary. They're not asking the king how to do it. Miracle 1. Next page, please. Miracle 2. Declaration of Independence. Next slide, please. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another and to assume among the powers of earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature, nature's God entitled them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel the separation. Next slide. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and they are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights. Does everybody know what a lien means? No one can file a lien against you on these core rights: life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. First, life. All life is precious, from the womb to the tomb. It's not your choice. It's not your right to decide on someone else. It's life, first and foremost. Second is liberty. You have liberty to make certain decisions of your own unless it affects life. Interesting. Life was first. Liberty is second. If your liberties affect the life of another, then we have a problem with your liberties. And last but not least is pursuit of happiness. This started out as private property on July 2nd. It got changed to pursuit of happiness because they wanted you to have possession of your thoughts, your hard work, your possessions. So now look at that. If your business infringes on the liberty of someone else and causes a life issue, then your business has a problem. This morality step is fitted together so everybody can understand what's the next step. If my liberality causes a life issue, I'm in trouble. If my pursuit of happiness cuts into your life or your liberty, then I have the problem. They're not leaving anybody out. When people say, well, I'm a capitalist, that makes me a conservative, I go, yeah, right. That don't mean anything. You tell me you're a biblical thinking person in business, then I got something to talk to you about. I love that word. I'm a capitalist. That makes me conservative. I have no idea what that means. The communists were conservative when I was a kid. right? We were the liberal thinkers back then. Now it's all switched. Words have power, and they get manipulated. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. Ooh, the king would not have liked this one. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariable the same object, evinces, next slide, a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty, powerful words, to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their security. Do you know why our founders didn't believe in having a draft? It was very simple. If there was a just war, Augustinian just war doctrine, all good men would rise up and fight. If there was no just war, then the men shouldn't rise up and fight. And if no men rise up and fight, there is no government, there is nothing. That's our job, men. It's our duty. We have people next to us, which are our co-regents, which is my wife Jody, it's Ann, it's Michelle, etc. Those are our co-regents that come alongside us when we have to fulfill that duty. Does that make sense? Men were designed to do that. You ladies are there to pray and come alongside us and support us. Next slide. Third miracle. I have Tom's cold, by the way. This is pretty powerful. You know, God says he raises up people to royal position for a time such as this, right? We've read the story of Esther. We read the story of, you name them, Joshua, Moses, etc. Well, in 1789, the new country has won the war. Okay, they won at Yorktown. They cornered Cornwallis. And the problem is they haven't paid the troops. And the generals have got together in Newburgh, New York in 1789, and they would like George Washington to become king. Now, mind you, the European powers all assumed that he would become the king. They were like, the war was over, no big deal. We'll just have another king over there. George will take over. He's a great guy. They all love him. You know, he was unanimously picked as the president. So they just assumed he was going to become king. Now, sometimes, I ask this question to myself. The best person to have as president is the person who doesn't want it. The best person to be the pastor is the one that doesn't necessarily want it right away. He's kind of going, well, maybe I don't want to do this. I don't know. Because the possession of it isn't what's important. It's what God called you to do. George Washington did not want to be the leader of the army. He did not want to be the president of the United States. He didn't want any of that stuff. He wanted to go to his farm. So, he hears about this meeting. And he walks in uninvited, just pops in on them. Of course, they're all quiet then, right? You know, they're talking, and you know how that goes, and quiet. And he says, gentlemen, you will permit me to put on my spectacles, for I have grown not only gray, but almost blind. In the service of my country. There would be no king. There would be no Napoleon. God raises people up for royal position for a time such as this. Men and women, young people and old. Everybody has a role. He could have said yes. He didn't. He said no. He calmed all down. The pay came along eventually. And we did not have a Napoleon. Miracle 3. Miracle 4. Ben Franklin. You know, I tell you, everybody complains about him and Jefferson, but I'll take a whole Congress and Senate full of these guys. So he's at the U.S. Constitution Convention. Samuel Adams, a number of them came there early because they knew if they didn't come there early, they would never get an outline done. So they had already outlined the Constitution. They had some struggles with some of Jefferson's, I'll call it illuminated ideas that he put in the Declaration. So when they were doing the Constitution, they wanted to clean that up. They wanted to get a little more clean Christian document on the Constitution of the United States. So they got there early and they framed it all out. But by the time they got about 3 weeks into this, they're all arguing. Everybody's worried about their little turf, states' rights, what are we going to do with slavery, and you got all different sides. They are not getting it done. So let's go to the next slide. So Ben Franklin, who some say is kind of the least, I say spiritual maybe, he's watched this whole thing because he's the oldest person in the whole crew. We need you old folks here to kind of remind us about history. You're important to keep us in tune. I'm getting to be one of those old folks too, I guess. I should keep myself in that. But young folks need that mix because they're firing and ready for battle. And sometimes we're the ones that say, hey, everybody, let's think about this. God's got this. So Franklin gives this great speech. He says, in the beginning of this contest with Great Britain, when we were sensible of danger, we had daily prayer in this room for divine protection. Our prayers, sir, were heard, and they were graciously answered. All of us who were engaged in the struggle must have observed frequent instances of superintending providence in our favor. There was miracle after miracle. Colonel Clinton got so tired of chasing Washington's army up to a river to only have the river flood. This happened like 3 times. He even admitted, if the providence of God is not involved with this man, it's impossible. You know what I mean? He just couldn't believe how he'd get his army right there, Washington get across, river would flood. To that kind providence, we owe this happy opportunity of consulting in peace on the means of establishing our future national felicity. And we have now forgotten that powerful friend. Or do we imagine we no longer need his assistance? I have lived, sir, a long time, and the longer I live, the more convincing proofs I see of this truth, that God governs in the affairs of men. And if a sparrow cannot fall to the ground without his notice, it is probable that an entire empire can rise without his assistance. Next page. We have been assured, sir, in the sacred writings, boy, for an atheist, he's really something else, isn't he? That except the Lord build the house, they labor in vain that build it. You know, I could just stop right there, and every one of us just, unless the Lord builds our house, it's really fruitless. We're just running in circles. Fear, right? Spirit of fear, rather than power, love, and a sound mind. I firmly believe this, and I also believe that without his concurring aid, we shall succeed this political building no better than the builder of Babel. That would be Nimrod. He didn't do very well. We shall be divided. Of course, the languages were divided, weren't they? By a partial local interest, our projects will be confounded, and we ourselves shall become a reproach and byword down to future ages. In other words, it's a point in time. Remember when George Washington said, no, there's not going to be a king? This is a point in time. There's these points in time when people have to do the right thing. Everything's sitting on a needle edge. And he's saying, if we don't do this and get this done, we will be a reproach to future generations that said, why didn't you get this done? I therefore beg leave to move that henceforth prayers imploring the assistance of heaven and its blessing on our deliberations be held in this assembly every morning. That's where we get the prayer that they're supposed to have in Congress. Now, they buckled down and they prayed for 2.5 hours after this. And after that prayer, they executed the Constitution. It got done. Next slide. Now the real message. All that was just to get you to hear. The real point of this discussion. On March 23rd of 1775, Patrick Henry made a speech. He said, "Sir, we are not weak. If we make a proper use of the means which the God of nature hath places in our power." Next slide. 3 millions of people armed in the holy cause of liberty. in such a country as that, which we possess, are invincible by any force which our enemy can send against us. What really happened on July 4th had nothing to do with economic prosperity, had nothing to do with religious freedom, had nothing to do with political freedom. It had to do with a holy cause. The holy cause of freedom. And of course, he ends it with the famous line, if life is life so dear or peace so sweet as to be purchased of chains and slavery. Next slide, please. Forbid it, Almighty God. I know not what course others may take, but as for me, give me liberty or give me death. Doesn't it sound a little bit like Joshua's statement? A little bit, doesn't it? Next slide. You see, when Samuel Adams came out after the Constitutional Convention, the words that came from his mouth, we have placed the true King, Jesus, back on the throne. That's what this whole thing was about. That is the holy cause of liberty. That's what happened on July 4th. They put the true King back on the throne. The true King could now be directly over the government. It wasn't a czar, it wasn't a king, it was the true King. We were going back to the Old Testament, how God designed it to be. That's the real story. And that's what we have in Luke 4. Maybe Caleb could pop those scripture verses up there. Because what does Jesus say? The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. He has sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives and recovery of sight to the blind, to set at liberty those who are oppressed, to proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord. This is what it was all about. The sheet was broken, right? The curtain was broken in the tabernacle. We are now once again a republic directly under God. There's no intermediary. We don't have to go to a pope, a king, direct. That's what happened on July 4th. Now go to John. There it is. And Pilate answered, am I a Jew? Your own nation and the chief priests have delivered you to me. What have you done? Jesus answered, my kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, my servants would fight so that I should not be delivered to the Jews. But now my kingdom is not from here. Pilate therefore said to him, are you a king then? Jesus answered, you say rightly that I am a king. For this cause I was born. For this cause I have come into the world, that I should bear witness to the truth. Everyone who hears this truth hears my voice. The message was to create a holy cause where you truly have liberty and freedom to bring the gospel to the lost. That didn't exist everywhere. You don't have to go to some prelate. You can go directly to God for direction in your life. Next slide. It should be it, right? Now, let's go back to Isaiah 9. That's what happened on July 4th. Isaiah 9. For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government will be upon his shoulders. And his name will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, and Prince of Peace. That is the story of July 4th. That's the biblical perspective of the story of July 4th. Were they perfect men? No. No, we don't get those, but we get people who are raised to royal position for the right time to do the right thing. And it's the same way today. All of you have been raised to royal position to do the right thing that is in your court to do. Men and women both, young and old. That's the story. That liberty has been passed down to you. It's a blood-bought liberty. I'll close with one last story. Some years ago, I was traveling with Marshall Foster, and he told me about how they had gone to Plymouth. And a gentleman who was with him was a commander in World War II, basically a destroyer, if I remember correctly. And he had fought in World War II. Men had died under his command. And he went into Plymouth. There's a museum there. And he said, I want to see the Mayflower Compact. And the gentleman there said, well, that's under lock and key. We don't let that come out. He goes, sir, I commanded a ship in World War II. 89 men died. That is a blood-bought document. You will bring it out for me to read it now. The guy just about went, yes, sir. He went and got the document and brought it out. He was able to read it for himself. That's the story. People have sacrificed that we could be this free republic under God. And today, people are trying to condition us to have a narrative to reject that. Remember what I said happened to the people of Israel? We want to be like the other peoples. We have to challenge ourselves all the time with what we think is normal, what we think is the next right thing to do. What does the Bible actually say? Is God going to fight our battles? When David went to battle to take on Goliath, what did he have? He had a whole story behind him. He had a history. He gathered 5 rocks because he was going to take Goliath and all his brothers out. He knew what God would do. God would fight the battles. That's the kind of boldness we really need to have in the world we live in today and in the realm that you have an effect. I think I'll stop right there. Praise God.